Rescuers and military engineers are actively working in the liberated regions of Kyiv, Chernihiv, and Sumy. Russian barbarians simply littered the land with mines, shells, and explosives. However, despite the danger in the cities and villages, people are returning, and life is resuming.
About 20 kilometres from Chernihiv is a small village, Yagidne. Before the Great War, about 300 people lived there. The first week of frantic bombing, residents spent in their own cellars.
There was such shellings that it was scary to raise my head.
The total horror began on March the 3rd, when Putin's villains entered the village and checked every yard.
A car drove up. They loaded us from the basement and brought us here at gunpoint.
This is the basement of a local school, which the Russians turned into a torture chamber. About 350 people were kept here for almost a month. Among them were 1-month-old babies, elderly and even paralysed people.
Such a shock, unbearable, and we didn't know if we would stay alive or if we would be all taken out and shot.
The prisoners could not sound the alarm or learn any news from the front. The Russian military took their phones. People were seldom released outside, only when the occupiers were in the mood. In the damp corridor, the prisoners were blue from cold, and in the rooms they fainted from suffocation. They started to get sick, coughs, skin rashes, swollen legs. The elderly could not stand the abuse.
More than 10 people died here.
The Russians did not allow them to bury the dead. The bodies lay beside the living.
They dug a hole and put them there. Guys who wanted to go and bury these people were shot at.
For a moment it seems that we are not shooting a news report, but a documentary about the crimes of the Stalinist NKVD. On the wall are 2 columns with names. In one, people who died in the basement. In the other, shot in the village.
The dates are not accurate.
People wrote dates just on the wall, so as not to forget what day it was. Due to overcrowding, adults and relatively healthy people sat up. They had to relieve themselves in a bucket. There were 73 children in this basement. To prevent them from sleeping on the floor, the men built homemade beds from chairs and desks. Prisoners ate Russian field rations. The Russian anthem was not sung, although the occupiers forced them to do it. Here on this wall, children wrote some verses of the anthem of Ukraine. They were tortured in the basement for almost a month. The locals did not even immediately realise that they were free. On March the 31st, the invaders fled. The Ukrainian forces entered the village and released the prisoners.
The man broke down the door. I went out, happy that there were no Russians.
Retreating, the occupiers ruined everything in a row, so people asked not to go to their homes, and they lived another week in this torture chamber. It turned out that many would have nowhere to go, like 15-year-old Nastya.
A shell hit the house. Not even a piece remained.
Breaking into the houses, Putin's horde stole everything they saw. Even the bed linen was torn from the beds, and worn underwear was not disdained. What did they steal from you?
Coat, underwear, I don't know why. There are no some shoes.
Now, this is not a village, it is a ruin. Russian equipment is abandoned in the yards, and stolen civilian cars with markers.
They are savages.
Mothers with babies left Yagidne after the experience. Some were allowed to live in temporarily empty houses. Volunteers brought food and clothes. People are trying to recover. They say the village can still be rebuilt over time, but locals will never forget the mockery by the Russian Nazis. Tetiana Nakoneka, Yevden Tur and Yuri Ostapuk, Fatih, ICTV United News.